Check. Come on in. Hey, Lynette.
How are you doing? I'm just checking in. I'm still alive. I'm just hurt.
You're muted. Or maybe I'm muted. Let me see. I guess maybe you're not muted. I had your sound down
Oh,
on my computer. No, I still don't hear you actually. Let me see if there's something here.
can you hear me now? It should be. It says on my end I'm unmuted. You don't need to hear me anyways.
Oh.
No worries.
Yeah, I don't hear. But as long as you can hear me right, I guess. I don't know. I can't find anything here that would change it. There's still people like that need to come in, so we'll get started probably in about 5-10 minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna turn my picture off.
I can't hear you at all. Okay.
Mm.
You good? Okay. Yeah, I'm still waiting for a bunch of people to come in. So. Okay. But I see you muted. I see. Okay. Hey, come on in.
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. How you doing?
I'm good.
Have a good week?
Yeah, it's been a good week. It's been a time, but it's been good. Yeah. Hasn't really been a productive week. It's just been like one of those. The days just go by.
Yeah. No, I've been doing like jack squat because I can't.
Yeah.
And I did kind of like get up and around, and I was like walking a little bit and everything, and then went to the doctor today, and they did more X-rays, and it's kind of like this time they did the X-rays with my full weight on it.
Yeah.
And they were like, it's like separating, like when you stand on it or whatever. So they're like, no, don't put any weight on it for 3 weeks.
Ooh, wow.
And so they were gonna put me in a cast, but I was kind of like, I talked them into giving me a boot instead. And, I'll just stay off of my my foot, and then after that they'll decide. But she doesn't think that I need what do you call it, surgery.
That's good.
So hopefully, in 3 weeks, then she says she'll start me on therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like thinking like therapy for me might be like a little bit, I don't know, unless you get somebody who knows how to handle like somebody with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease like I got. Like most therapies aren't really that great for me.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But in any case, I'm kind of like, stuck not doing much. At least it doesn't hurt or anything.
Yeah.
But it was like just a temptation, just because I can kind of like get around. It's kind of, so I don't know. It's so it didn't look any worse, and this I think the only reason that like I could see separation is just because I had my full weight on it.
Yeah.
So they're just like, nah, it'll separate.
Is it hurt when you have full weight on it or no?
It feels more like like pressure, like if you like it's kind of like because it's swollen.
Yeah.
So it feels like pressure, but not like sharp pain or anything like that. And if I was standing too much on it, like when I was cooking or whatever, I kind of like standing around doing it. Then later on when I sit down, I could feel kind of like a little, it was kind of irritated there on the side and stuff. So I thought, well, maybe it's not a good idea. But
Well, this isn't for like a sharp pain or anything.
no, it's not like huge or anything. So yeah. Oh, did you get your business going a little bit more? And
Just kind of slow things down. It's so expensive to get everything started.
Yeah.
You want money here, money there, money here, money there. There's so many different regulations. So I'm slowly getting it in pieces because once I officially get it going, then I think it makes it a little harder for me.
You need like startup capital or anything?
No, I'm okay for right now.
Okay.
My biggest worry is like starting into it and then not being really prepared. Because, I mean, that's one of the things, like, my dad had me study for the general contractors test and stuff, and I remember having to listen to this guy, he gave me some CDs about the law, and he mentioned the law guy said that most businesses fail because they don't understand the business side of it. They don't understand how to, when to pay taxes, how to do certain things. And
right.
He says they might be good at their trade, but because of this area that they're not really experienced in,
right.
they fall under. So I've really been trying to learn up a lot of stuff on my own. Because it's a corporation and it's an S corp, so then I'm like, okay, well, how do I pay myself? How do I get myself to live in?
you planning on having employees or anything like that?
If it grows, yeah.
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 Yeah. So you need to structure it like kind of properly before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because that stuff's like hard to unravel.
Yeah.
You know.
It's just a lot of information, and everyone else has like so.
I think like the biggest thing, and I did this wrong, is to set it up like where it is where you don't have everything separate. You know what I mean? Like where you got to make sure that like your accounts don't mingle or all that. Because for me, it's kind of like, okay, I set up a corporation to do like the rental. I was going to buy more rentals, but I just said, just to kind of like protect myself from liabilities and stuff. But it was just so like hectic and confusing, and this kind of like, oh man, like emails going here and then I don't have this going, and I need to pay this right away. So it came from personal credit card, and I was just like, this is a giant. I realized I'd kind of created a giant mess. But really, it's almost like better. I almost feel like I might sell just because it's at the top of the market anyway, I think, and then start all over when everything tanks, So and then start with a whole new, corporation or whatever, But I the only thing I'd done is like just a personal thing, like for audio, But that wasn't like a corporation. I didn't really do that properly either. But it's not that big of a. Oh, here's somebody else coming in. Let me see. Hey, what's up? Hey, Ted.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
I'm not getting any audio from you guys, from either one today. So
What about me?
I don't know why.
What if you have earbuds?
What if I
Wanna
have
try
earbuds?
that? Maybe it's just your.
It could be the computer. Yeah, I'm gonna try some earbuds
Okay.
and see if I hear anything.
Can you hear me, Ted?
You know what? I'm gonna try something real quick.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I can
Turn
hear
AirPlay
and
off.
I can hear everybody.
I can hear everybody. I can hear
Right
Mark. I
back.
can hear you.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let me try that again. Can I hear
Hello?
you, Ted?
I can hear you.
No,
Can you hear me?
I don't hear you.
Check 1, 2,
Let
3,
me see
4,
if I
5.
just turn AirPlay off altogether. And I still don't hear you.
I'm not talking.
Oh, now I hear you. Okay. Oh, let me see. Everything keeps changing with this.
I can hear you fine.
Yeah, okay. Now I hear
that.
you, Leanne.
Okay, yeah, I'm here. I'm just gonna mute and
For some reason, like I've been able to have it here on Apple TV, which I kind of need so everybody can see. Once I do the screen sharing stuff. Let me see if I can find some. We're still waiting, Ted. There's still some
Hey, I still
more
don't get
people
traffic
coming.
on the way to work.
Okay, no
So
problem.
we'll
I
get
thought I was
going
late.
hopefully here in about 5 minutes. I don't know.
no worries, no worries.
Yeah.
And then
I used to never.
in the meantime, let me see if I can get this.
So I'd have to take the
See what
streets.
the audio. If there's
And now I'm,
audio
like,
options.
freeway every day. And I go during like the time period that if I ever
Close
went
to Zoom.
at that time last year, or previous years, I would definitely be late to work. And now I'm like 25 minutes early. Try those. See if, oh, do you hear them now?
Yeah, I hear them when they're not on Apple TV. I think it's an Apple TV.
Our Apple TV is broken.
It's that too.
Well,
but actually, it's with Zoom because Zoom. It used to be that I could
what if you have
AirPlay it, but I would still hear it on the
what if
computer.
can you connect this to my Bluetooth speaker?
I don't know.
Okay. Then you'll be able to hear them a little bit.
Okay, that might work.
You guys are too smart.
Well, smart
No,
enough. like really create something bad over here.
Yeah, at least you're creating, right?
Yeah. Let's see how technical I can be. There's no separate audio settings on here. Let me try it one more time.
Try Bluetoothing them so you can hear them
Oh.
better. Hi, family.
Okay, let me try hear audio.
We're good. We're
Talk
good.
for a sec.
Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Okay, yeah, you guys disappeared.
What are you sorry about? What are you sorry?
It just some issue and I didn't get a chance to.
Oh, you're good. You're fine.
All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna leave the audio.
Unless you insulted my mom or
I'm
something.
gonna leave the audio. I'm gonna leave the AirPlay off. But as soon as I get going and I start screen sharing, then I won't be able to hear you guys. Okay.
Does that work?
I won't talk.
Okay.
But they can chat with you.
No
Yeah.
worries.
Okay. In the meantime, I
They can
think
still,
when
they can still chat with you.
yeah, you can still chat with me. You can still send messages or whatever.
Did you get mine, Mark?
Huh?
Did you get mine?
Oh.
I sent you a chat that I could hear you, like, I don't know, at the beginning.
Let me see. System preferences. I'm gonna try to also put this on the Bluetooth.
No worries. No worries.
Is this my speaker's broken on the computer? Where's Bluetooth?
I see Ted chatting.
Hey, Joe. Oh, tech.
I don't know how to get the message, though. Oh, let's see.
So now I just wondered what the name of this.
Okay.
Tech 2 Supreme, not connected. I don't think it will connect to this. All right. Enough of that. How you guys doing?
Oh, fine, I'll let you.
All right. We got half a crew today.
No,
We got half a crew today.
yeah, I have 2 days.
Okay. Well, since I think we're about ready to go. So yeah. Anyway, let me go ahead and open up in prayer, and then we'll go ahead and get going. Lord, we thank you that everybody's here safe, Lord, and we just pray that you'd bless your word, open our ears to be able to hear from you, to really see how your word, Lord, how it connects together, how everything that you've put in there is in place and the way that it's supposed to be, Lord, and help us discover new things, Lord. Help loosen my lips to be able to talk and communicate clearly. And in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Anyway, let me put this up here for screen share, and I'll get you guys a little bit caught up. So fine. Okay. You guys see that, right? Okay. And then this TV. Okay. So just kind of like recap where we're at. Of course, Israel was taken into captivity in 682 BC, and they were sent into exile in Babylon. And when they come back from Babylon, they come back to their homeland, and they realize that it's not the way it should be. And they start realizing, you know what, we're back in the right place, but it's still exile. And from then on, they've always considered themselves to be in exile. And they started observing the fact that the rest of the scriptures, everything from Genesis on, was actually an exile story. It's as if God had expressed it and put it on the writer's heart to write this from a point of view of exile in a way that later could really be understood by the Jews to show that humanity is in exile, and not just humanity, but in a sense, all of creation is in exile. So when we looked at Genesis 2 and 3 last week, we started to see that, of course, they were kicked out of the garden, and we think of that as exile. But there was it wasn't just a geographical exile, from one place over here to another place over here, but there was a type of exile all the way from top to bottom, that once Adam and Eve were disconnected from God, that they became isolated or alienated, not just from God, but to each other. And they started, fighting each other. We're in a sense, we're exiled from each other, and we're everybody experiences a degree of isolation, but also that the ground was alienated from them, that everything that they were supposed to have dominion over, that dominion didn't really work anymore. And even the ground was cursed because of them. It wasn't that, and if you think about it, it's more of like a natural progression. Well, it's a natural progression, or like the logical conclusion, just as much as it's a judgment from God. So like, in fact, we don't even have a record in the scripture of God saying it directly that he is angry until you get to Moses and the burning bush, where God's anger burned at him, right? But even in Genesis 1 and 2, it's not talking, we can kind of like think, we can kind of like add that into the story maybe, but really what it is that his judgments is the same thing as sort of like a logical outcome of the way that it is because of the fall, right? So if you look at God's judgment, they're never disconnected from whatever's going on. Okay, so it's God handing a people over, somebody that was previously connected to him, and he warns them a lot of times through prophets saying, if you don't turn back, this is going to happen. He's handing them over to a logical conclusion, or just handing them over to something. So if you think of like Samson, and Samson had this supernatural ability to fight Philistines, and he wouldn't have been able to do it without God. But when he started, when he fell into the sin of, when he went too far, God kind of hides his face. He withdraws his spirit from Samson, and the logical thing happens. Samson can't do any of that without his connection to God in that way. And you find that over and over again in the scripture. Israel was not going to be able to exist without God supernaturally, keeping them strong against their enemies. And so in Adam and Eve, we see that what happens is that God creates a universe, and he's actually keeping it together. He's keeping the water separated. He's keeping them exalted. And now that they're disconnected from the top, they go down back into the dust that they were born from. It's like, from dust you came, and to dust you're going to return, because you don't have that connection above you anymore. And that's where it all starts breaking down. Now, I'm kind of jump the gun a little bit this week and talk about a type of exile that we have all the way in the book of Daniel. So if you want to turn to Daniel chapter 4, there's going to be a story, and I call it the exile of Nebuchadnezzar. What happens with Nebuchadnezzar is that he has this bizarre dream, and then Daniel has to interpret it for him. But you have all this imagery really from the Garden of Eden in it, and you have this connection with the fall of man in it. So what happens, and if you think about it, Daniel chapter 4 is really dictated by Nebuchadnezzar. And you think Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babylon. He is Babylon itself. You know, he's the one who causes them to go into exile, and he's at the top of that. And yet God brings Nebuchadnezzar on board, and Nebuchadnezzar basically gets saved. So it's an incredible story, but it involves his exile. So King Nebuchadnezzar, verse 1, King Nebuchadnezzar, and he gets an entire chapter in the Bible, which I think is incredible, right? You know, this Babylonian king gets a chapter in the Bible. It's crazy. So King Nebuchadnezzar, to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. It has seemed good to me to show the sign and wonders that the Most High God has done for me. How great are his signs, how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion endures from generation to generation. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and prospered in my palace. I saw a dream that made me afraid. As I lay in bed, the fancies and the visions of my head alarmed me. So I made a decree that all the wise men of Babylon should be brought before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. So here he has, there's going to be here an idea, okay? Some of you are familiar with this story, and he has this dream basically that he sees this tree that's about to get chopped down. Now, in the ancient world and in Babylonian culture, there was this sort of imagery that kings were trees. And the reason that kings were seen as trees, in a sense, was because they have a connection to the earth, but they reach out to the heavens. And so what you have is you have a human that's planted in the earth, but has a connection with the gods, okay? And so a king has to have a good connection with the gods and a good rapport with whatever god he serves, or that the country serves, or that he serves. Because if the gods are displeased with the king and the king's no good, the people are going to suffer. So if a kingdom was flourishing and they were becoming more powerful and things were going well, that was a sign that the king had a good connection with the gods. But if things were going bad, then, you know, that relationship that he had with the gods was broken down. So what he had to have, part of his administration would be to have usually priests, okay? And priests would kind of give him advice and say, and offer sacrifices so that he could maintain a good relationship with the gods. And so it got kind of changed here in the Babylonian Empire, and what his father had done is instead of just having priests, was like these wise men who were magistrates. They were governors. Later on, they became the magi that we hear about, you know, like that go and visit, you know, like in the Christmas story. They're related. It came from this, okay? And they kind of give the king advice. But Nebuchadnezzar was a little bit sketched out with them. He almost had them all killed at one point. But Daniel, he's got Daniel in with these guys, okay? So verse 6, so I made a decree that all the wise men of Babylon should be brought before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of this dream. Then the magicians, the enchanters, the Chaldeans, the astrologers came in. I told them the dream, but they could not make known to me its interpretation. At last Daniel came in before me, and he who was named Belteshazzar, that was his Babylonian name, Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy God. So Bel, the first part is Bel, or it's related to Baal, okay? In whom is the spirit of the gods. And I told him the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that no mystery is too difficult for you, tell me the visions of my dream that I saw and their interpretation. The vision of my head as I lay in my bed were these. I saw, and behold, a tree, in the midst of the earth, and its great its height was great. The tree grew and became strong, and its top reached to the heaven, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth. Its leaves were beautiful, and its fruit abundant. You get the Eden imagery here. And it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the heavens lived in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. I saw in my vision of my head, and as I lay in the bed, and behold, a watcher. A watcher is one of the sons of God, or the Elohim, one of the heavenly council, okay? A watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven. He proclaimed aloud and said thus, chop down the tree and lop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches, but leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze amid the tender grass of the field. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. Let his portion be with the beasts of the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from man, and let a beast's mind be given to him. And let 7 periods of time, which is 7 years, pass over him. The sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will and sets it over the lowliest of men. This dream I, Nebuchadnezzar, saw, and you, O Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation, but you are able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in you. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was dismayed for a while, and his thoughts alarmed him. The king answered and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation alarm you. Belteshazzar answered and said, my lord, may the dream be for those who hate you, and its interpretation for your enemies. The tree which you saw, which grew and became strong, so that its top reached to the heaven, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth, whose leaves were beautiful, and its fruit abundant, and which was found food for all, under which the beasts of the field found shade, and whose branches the birds of the heavens live. It is you, O king, who have grown and become strong. Your greatness has grown and reaches to the heavens, and your dominion to the ends of the earth. And because the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven, saying, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, and in the tender grass of the field, and let him be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field till 7 periods of time pass over him. This is the interpretation, O king. It is the decree of the Most High which has come upon my lord the king, that you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. You shall be made to eat grass like an ox, and you shall be wet with the dew of heaven, and 7 periods of time shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. And as it was commanded to leave the stump of the roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be confirmed for you for the time that you know that heaven rules. Therefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable to you. Break off your sins, practicing righteousness, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the oppressed, that there may perhaps be a lengthening of your prosperity. So all this came upon Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, and the king answered and said, is not this great Babylon which I have built by the mighty power as a royal residence for the glory of my majesty? So he gets proud, cocky, arrogant here. Verse 31, while the words were still in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you, and you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling place shall be with the beasts of the field. And it goes on to recapitulate what happens in the dream. So, but at the end of the days, I'm skipping down to verse 34. At the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my reason returned to me, and I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. So what happens, I'm skipping down to verse 36. At the time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and splendor returned to me. My counselors and my lord sought me, and I was established in my kingdom, and still more greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works and are right, and his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. So you get here the idea that, he caused the exile of the Jews, but now he's going into exile. And what he is exiled into is, it's like he's been cast out of his own Garden of Eden. But he's also lost the kingdom. And it's a picture really of what happened with Adam and Eve, that they lost their kingdom, because Adam and Eve are, they're not just priests, but to the rest of the creation, but they're also a king and a queen to the rest of creation. They are supposed to govern over it. And in a way, what Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians understood, like a king being connected to God, they're not that far off, okay? As far as that was, it wasn't exactly right, but really what God is showing him is that, no, you know what? I give authority to whoever I want to. And if you are connected to me, I can give you authority. And that's what's, and it's proper in that way for man to do that, to be over the kings, over the beasts of the field, and over the land, and those sorts of things. If not, what happens is a reduction of man. Adam and Eve's exile is a reduction. It's not just going away. So exile is not just going away, but it's also a loss of the exaltation of a man, right? And what happens is that in Adam and Eve, what we see is that they listen to a serpent. Now we get so caught up with the serpent being Satan and everything, and I do believe it is Satan. But the reason that we see a serpent there is because it emphasizes that this is a beast. So when the serpent is cursed, it's cursed are you among all the animals, all the livestock. And the idea is that Adam and Eve should have never listened to somebody that was under them. They're listening to a beast, and that beast wants to have them or to trick them. What we're going to see in the Cain story is that sin is crouching at his door like an animal, and that animal wants to have him. But he's supposed to rule over that animal. And this idea develops throughout Scripture to where even the kingdoms of men are start to be portrayed as beasts. If you skip over to Daniel 7, this is where we have the idea of the Antichrist and everything, and the beast. But here's a vision that Daniel has much later, and Daniel's vision of 4 beasts. Now, what these beasts were, they were Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian kingdom, followed by the Medes and the Persians in the next kingdom, followed by the Greek kingdom, and it has, later on we see a figure that's really Alexander the Great. And all this is written before any of these events occurred. And then you have the Roman Empire, right? But here, in the first year of Belshazzar, in verse 1, Daniel 7, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, this is, I think, Nebuchadnezzar's grandson. But anyway, Daniel saw a dream and visions of his head as he lay in his bed. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. If you remember, the sea is chaos waters, the chaos waters of the nations, right? So this is coming out of the nations are going to come 4 great beasts, right? And the four great beasts came out of the sea, one different from one another. The first was like a lion. This is Babylon, right? The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. He's talking about Nebuchadnezzar here again. He's saying all these beasts, but the rest of the beasts that he described, they remain beasts. And what he's basically saying is that Nebuchadnezzar was taken out of the mind of a beast and given a human mind, and which is, all of these beasts are very powerful, and we think, wow, these are powerful, really, like massive beasts, but they're not exalted in the way that man is, or is supposed to be. Even though they're men's empires, they're portrayed as being something less than what a human is supposed to be. So, so that's where you have that beast language. Let's go to Genesis 4. And this is the story of Cain and Abel. So Adam knew Eve and his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of the sheep. Keep that word in mind, a keeper of the sheep. And Cain, a worker of the ground. And in the course of time, Cain brought the Lord an offering, the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. And the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. So a couple things here. First of all, we're not really told if there's anything wrong with his actual sacrifice, right? I've read some commentary and heard sermons and everything about how Abel brought a better offering because it was an animal sacrifice, and that's really what God wanted, and some other things. Whatever it is, God, what we know from this paragraph is that Cain is not doing well, and he's not doing the right thing. Go ahead, Jerry. Uh-huh.
This is one of the verses that we use to emphasize that point about the first morning, the first fruits, and
bringing the first fruits, right? Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of times what you hear, and there might be something to it, that like it is pointed out that Abel brings the best of what he has. It doesn't really say that about Cain, but it doesn't say that Cain didn't do that with the best of his fruits. What we know is that Cain is not right in it. So my thought is that even if the sacrifices were switched around, Cain had some attitude that was already working on him, that God wasn't going to accept the sacrifice no matter what, because he's just sacrificing, but he's just not right, and God's warning him, saying, you need to get control of this thing, right? Now he puts it in an interesting way. If you do not well, sin is crouching at the door. So here we have that animal that wants to have Cain. Its desire is contrary to you, or it's toward you, right? But you must rule over it. So it's almost as if that sin is something outside of Cain that is trying to get him. And then once you have the picture of him, then you can think that like once he's killed his brother, now sin has got Cain, and it's an animal, okay? And so so you almost have like this sin on the outside trying to get him. So Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and they were in the field. Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" He said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" So I'm wondering if it's now there are two separate words from, like Abel being a keeper of the grounds, and this my brother's keeper, but it's the same sort of an idea. And sometimes you have these themes where even though the same exact word isn't used, you still have some sort of a theme going there. Like Adam and Eve were supposed to subdue the earth and keep it, so so it seems to me that he could be kind of mocking God, like well, Cain was a keeper of animals. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I supposed to do what he was doing with the animals or something like that? So it's just a thought. But verse 10, and the Lord said, "What have you done?" Get this, "The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground." We see, just like the animal is kind of like a separate thing, like a character, right? Sin is a character. The ground actually is a character too, in a way. It's a clumsy way to describe it, okay? But like, cursed is the ground because of you. The ground in some parts of Scripture actually sort of becomes a witness. And I'll show you an example of that. Go ahead.
When he asked Cain and Abel, God is doing something. We asked, not Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve, where art thou? He knew where they were.
Yeah.
Right now he's asking Cain, where's your brother? Well, he knew where he was, so
right.
he's looking for.
Yeah. It's a little bit.
Same thing. What have you done? He knew what he did.
Right. Yeah. So it's God asking questions that he already knows the answer to. Yeah. To have that person kind of like reflect. Yeah. It's kind of like me asking. Yeah. It's like if you have a kid that's acting up, and you know that they're being rebellious or doing something or hiding something, and you know what it is, but you asking them, "Where are you at?" And then hearing it from them, because you're trying to get them to think about it, because God already knows it, and and here he knows it not just because he's God, but because the ground is telling him. Okay, so here it's like. Let me see. And now you are cursed. Verse 10. And the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground." So we have this idea of his blood crying out, right? And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened up its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. If you go to Revelation 12, I always try to connect these to Revelation, because Revelation has all these references, and you go to verse 11, Revelation 12:11. Actually, let's go down to 13. When the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to a place where she is to be nourished for a time, times and half a time. The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, to sweep her away with the flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from its mouth. It's not to say that the earth has a conscience or anything, but it becomes kind of like a character, or a witness. It's like, look what the ground is doing. And the ground is cursed from Adam, and it becomes cursed from, and Abel actually gets cursed from the ground. here in a couple of verses. But it's as if the ground is a witness. In Jewish apocalyptic literature, sometimes you find how nature is witnessing against mankind because of the way of its abuses. When we get to the Noah story, right before that, you're going to see that that there was a lot of violence on the earth, and that God has got to clean up the earth, and clean man off of it, or that's what He decides to do. So now you are cursed from the ground, verse 11. Genesis. I'm back in Genesis 4. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. So Cain is saying, I am not only more cursed than my mom and dad, Adam and Eve, but I'm cursed from the ground. And it also means that I'm going to be even more alienated from you. You're going to hide your face. Hiding your, when God talks about hiding his face, he talks about how he's talking to usually Israel or somebody that has a relationship. It's like David says, please don't hide your face from me. In fact, I've got a bunch of, I found a bunch of references to, in Deuteronomy 31:17, it says, in that day I will become angry with them. He's talking about the Israelites, and forsake them. I will hide my face from them and they will be destroyed. Deuteronomy 31:18, it says, I will certainly hide my face in that day because of all their wickedness in turning to other gods. Deuteronomy 32:20, I will hide my face from them, he said, and see what their end will be, for they are a perverse generation, children who are unfaithful. So you see this again and again where it's somebody who God has a relationship with, but now he's turning from them, or it's actually he's being kind of like handed over to a logical conclusion. So he says, behold, you have driven me away today from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive. So it's definitely exile language again here. And a wanderer on the earth. And whoever finds me will kill me. Then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest anyone who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Nod, by the way, means wandering. So he goes into the land of wandering, east of Eden. Again, east of Eden. So you got that whole progression going east, east, east until you hit Babylon, right? But the mark of Cain is not a curse on Cain. The mark is to protect him. But not just to protect Cain, it's to protect humanity from disintegrating too quickly. Because if he's going to get killed by somebody else is going to take vengeance on that person, and you're just going to have this acceleration of murder. You see this all over the world. Somebody does something wrong, you get retribution. People like do something back, and it goes back and forth until you have full-on war. Verse 17, Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. When he built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. This is interesting. You think, well, wait a minute. Cain is supposed to be a wanderer on the earth, but he builds a city. And so right there, it's pretty much telling you this wandering isn't necessarily a geographical thing. It's a spiritual thing. You can be in a city, and cities are full of people in exile. You go to the densest cities in the world, and there's all kinds of people to be around, and it's all full of lonely people and people walking around in exile. To Enoch, was born Arad, and you have a couple names here. And skip down to verse 19. You have this character called Lamech, right? Lamech took 2 wives. So this is a great grandson of Cain. Lamech took 2 wives. The name of one was Ada, and the name of the other Zillah. Here you see an even further eroding of humanity, because how can a man have 2 wives and then, like Adam and Eve, be one flesh? There's already something wrong with this. Okay, it is common. It was probably it was common in those days in that area, but it's not God's plan. It just shows you how people have fallen from Eden. Ada bore Jabal, and he was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. And here's a couple of description of that. Let's skip down to verse 23. Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is 7-fold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. So you have a complete perversion here of the reason that God put a mark on Cain and said, if anybody kills Cain, they're going to get vengeance is going to be put on them. He's saying, well, I killed somebody just for looking at me the wrong way or hitting me, and so, and he's bragging basically, and I don't even think he's including God in this picture, but he's just saying, if anybody, kills me, they're going to, suffer all kinds of consequences. He's talking out of the side of his neck, but it's complete perversion of what the mark of Cain was supposed to do. So we just see a deterioration, and it's just going downhill from here. Now, verse 25, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called him Seth. For she said, God has appointed to me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. Let me stop there for a second. In the ancient world, your lineage was counted by the men. Okay, it's Abraham's seed. It's patriarchy. Okay, ancient world is all about patriarchy. What's unique in Genesis 3 and the curse is that when God tells Eve about her seed, some offspring that's going to come from her, it's unusual. Okay, there's something completely. An ancient would have read this and go, "Why? What happened there?" It's like the seed of the woman. You always referred to the seed of the men. All these lineages are male, right? And what it does is that it looks forward really to the Messiah, because it's not about Joseph, it's about Mary being impregnated by the Holy Spirit. So it's among other things, it's about the virgin birth. Okay. Now, Eve has this in her mind, and she knows that I'm going to bear a son, or there's going to be an offspring, or a son's son, or something that's going to go on. And that is going to be the one who's going to stomp the serpent's head. Okay, so she's already looking for some kind of a savior. Later on, we find out that she's really, what she really sees as a Messiah figure, right? But we don't know who this is yet. But she knows, first of all, she had a good son and she had a bad son. One killed the other son. And she's like, it can't be Cain because he's a murderer and he's been thrown out into exile. The seed isn't going to come from him, and Abel is dead. So she's wondering, what's going on with this? So when Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth, she says, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. What she's saying is that this is going to be a seed. This is the seed of the woman thing. And this goes, again, also all the way to Revelation 12, where you have the seed of the woman. And the seed of the woman is basically fighting the serpent. You're back to Genesis 3. So To Seth also a son was born. He called his name Enosh. At that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Let's go to chapter 5, and we'll have just enough time to. So here we have descendants, okay? I'm not going to go through all these, but I just want to point out a couple things. Verse 1, this is the book of the generations of Adam. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. So here you are tracing it from Adam, right? Male and female, he created them, and he blessed them, and he named them man, and they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth. So really, we're going to look at this lineage from Seth. Okay, we're not going to follow the lineage of Cain. There is no lineage of Abel, but you're going to follow a lineage all the way down through the Old Testament, and it's going to end up being David. You can fast forward all the way to David, and then you know that Jesus comes from the lineage of David. So here is where the Bible traces this lineage all the way through. And I'm going to do that in a separate Bible study, but you can trace that lineage all the way through the Bible. And there's a couple places where it gets there's some real surprises there, because some people that are in that lineage are cursed, and you think it's all over. But then the way that what happens is that God circumvents that problem, and you have two lineages that are provided in the New Testament, one going through Eve and one going through Mary and one going through Joseph. There's a problem with Joseph's lineage, but there's not a problem with Eve's lineage. There's something, it's kind of hard to describe right now. But anyway, when Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness, named him Seth. So here you have Seth as being the seed of Adam, right? And I'll just read a couple of these. The days of Adam after he fathered Seth were 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Thus the days of Abraham that lived were 930 years, and he died. And then you skip down at the bottom of verse 6, blah, 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 and Seth, and they're 912, and he died. You have these in verse 9, and he died. And what's happening here is that you're looking for the seed of the woman, but it's like, wait a minute, you know that it's going to come through Seth, but all these people are dying. So-and-so came, maybe he's going to be the Messiah, or he's going to be the one, and he died, and he died, and he died. And it goes there all the way down until the bottom of Genesis 5. And here you have a different Lamech, okay? It's a little confusing, but this is a different, verse 27, it talks about Methuselah, who becomes like the oldest man ever, and he died. So when Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son, and he called his name Noah. Noah means rest, okay, saying, out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief or rest from our work and from the painful toil of our hands. Lamech lived after he fathered Noah 595 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Lamech were 770 years, and he died. And so let's go back to this sentence. He calls his name Noah, meaning rest. He says, out of the ground, which is interesting because here you have that ground theme again, okay? That coming out from the dust. Out of the dust that the Lord has cursed, the ground that God's cursed, this one shall bring us relief. And you look at Noah's story and you're thinking, how is this true? Because Noah has relief for himself and his family, but by the time that Lamech, Lamech dies before any of this happens. So he's talking about humanity, basically, and he's saying that Noah somehow is going to give them relief. But you're going, it can't be Noah that he's talking about. But what he's doing is that he's looking through Noah and he sees Christ. Okay? This is common in prophecy. Okay? It's like you see David, but you see Christ through David. And there's some prophecies that even in the Psalms where David speaks of himself, and he's speaking of himself, and then you realize, wait a minute, he's not really talking about himself anymore. He's talking about a Messiah or somebody that's coming from his lineage. But it's always that view of Christ going through that lineage. And if you think about that, Noah in a way will portray Christ, and he will be a type of Christ. But ultimately, it's not really talking about Noah at all. It's about Christ. And I'm going to close here, but what we're going to see next week is that there's a way to view the Noah story. There's, in fact, well, I'll just show you something here. Evan actually wrote a, get this out of the way. He wrote a translation of the Noah flood story, right? And if you there was a book he recommended to me that was written by a Jewish person who grew up with the Old Testament scriptures in Hebrew. And when they first read the English Old Testament, they could barely recognize it. They're like, what's this talking about? Is this the same story? Because there's a lot of things that you don't pick up on, right? And you can kind of translate it and use the words, and do those things, but you don't catch the imagery, okay? And there's things in the Noah story, first of all, that you find out that God is grieved, but then I found out that the word for eyes is the same as fountains, because your eyes are like fountains of your, like when you cry, they're the fountains of your face, your body. They're fountains, like the fountains of your face. But now you have an imagery where like the fountains of the deep are opened. It's as if the earth is crying and weeping, and that there's a crying from heaven coming down. And it's like I said, it's not telling you that God is angry. He might be, but the emphasis is on God being grieved. And then Noah, his name being rest, it's like he's resting and he's taken away from the earth, high above the earth. And it says actually that the ark is walking on water, so it's just, it's not like maybe there wasn't a way to say floating, or I don't know, but it's like, and you think, wait, Christ is so when Christ walks on the water, he is that Noah image walking on the water, and so there's a lot of types there in the Noah story. Anyway, I thought I'd end there, that, like that from, so basically what we covered today, just shortly, is that, that Nebuchadnezzar in exile shows you not just that he's geographically removed, but he's in exile from an exalted position that he was supposed to be, and is actually right for him and right for man, because God gave authority to man the same way that God gave authority to Nebuchadnezzar to rule. But let me give you like just one more thought, and I wasn't going to go into this until next week. But if you think about what Christ did, okay, it's appropriate for whoever the Messiah was going to be to descend all the way to the dust of the earth and come out of the dust of the earth, be the new Adam, okay? Not only did Christ do that, where he comes up from the dust of the earth, but he goes to the heart of the earth. I mean, he goes into the darkest, deepest depths of the earth, he's in Sheol or Hades, and it's, and then when he is lifted up, he's not just over creation, but all authority is given to him. not just kind of like the authority that you have with a king like Nebuchadnezzar, where it's a tree and he's over the animals of the field and the plants and stuff like that. But even the heavenly host, that God, that Jesus becomes that that all authority is given, on all authority on earth and over the earth and under the earth, all of it is given to him. And that's what Jesus captures on behalf of mankind, is to get the scroll that in Revelation 4 or 5, the title deed of the earth, but that all authority is given to him, even the authorities in the heavens. So that, and that's where we see that whole connection, all the way from the dust of the ground all the way to the top. Anyway, I'll end there because otherwise I'll rabbit trail again.
One quick question.
Yeah, I got a question.
I know you probably have you studied the book of Enoch, and have you did a study on it to
Studied the book of Enoch. If I haven't studied the book of Enoch, I have read the book of Enoch up until it gets into like the poems, and there's a lot of things there that I wasn't. It was among the literature that like we studied in college for what do you call it? The Jewish I took a class on the Jewish apocalyptic, but it was kind of like mixed in with a whole bunch of other things, and it wasn't like I read all those books. What's interesting is that so my reading of my understanding of Enoch, all you have to do is like read Enoch, just the first, I don't know, maybe 20 pages of it, right? And then when you read, and some of it's going to ring familiar, you're going to go like, wait a minute, isn't this from Jude? Didn't Paul say it? And then you start being able to see like, well, there's a story here, and it seems like the biblical narrative picks up on those different things. I don't think that Enoch is in any of the. It's not in the Catholic Bible. I think it might. I don't even think it's in the Greek Orthodox Bible. I think that it may. I think, but they kept those books, So it's a little confusing. I would say just read it. I mean, obviously, a lot of New Testament writers had read it. It doesn't mean that it's completely inspired, but it's in the minds of the writers there. It's a good reference. So your assignment: read the book of Enoch. I like the book. I liked what I read in the book of Enoch, and it was interesting because I was kind of like, well, yeah, this is something that like some of the people I've listened to have talked about these things, and I'm going, wait, there's a progression there, and you see it, and when you have like, say, Christ going into the heart of the earth and preaching to the souls in prison or whatever. If you apply the book of Enoch, you're not talking about like you're talking about him, Enoch, preaching judgment against the sons of God who had slept with women or whatever, like in Genesis 6. They're being held there for the day of judgment, and he goes and preaches and say they've been in the book of Enoch. They've been saying, Enoch, can you talk to God to us and see if we can get forgiveness? And he's like, it's not going to happen for you. And then you see like references where like you have the darkest of depths were reserved for in Tartarus for those angels who had left their proper domain. Where is that again? But then you're going, if you read the book of Enoch, you're going, oh, I think I know what that's referring to. Yeah. So anyway, that's it for tonight, guys. Let me,
Thank you.
oh, I actually heard you.
Oh, good. Very, 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 very powerful, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you next week.
All right. See you next.
Have a good week, everybody.
All right. Goodbye.